using, it's actually funny, well, not funny, it's terrible. I have a really addictive personality. I've always been like addicted to something, whether it was shopping or Facebook or whatever. And I did an oxy. I got addicted right away. And then I finally found a regular dealer and I started picking up all the time.
He did it twice. And I'm telling you right now, next time you set up on this block, none of that. A pause, a voice in disbelief. Oh, wow. Now imagine this. The same California boulevards that sold the world on sunshine, reinvention, and second chances turning into long, unbroken rows of tarps, carts, and makeshift shelters. Not a movie, not a political ad. A normal Tuesday, a reality spreading block by block. Every sunrise, the count grows. Not if we act when the suffering becomes too big to ignore. Because here's the truth California is wrestling with in 2025. The dream isn't only expensive anymore. For too many people, it is becoming unreachable. And the longer we delay real solutions, the more that promise collapses under neglect, burnout, and a system that was never built to catch this many falling lives.
I remember the day the fentanyl came out, and my dealer said, you know, I've got these new pills, they're fake oxys. He didn't tell me they were fentanyl because nobody knew what fentanyl was yet. He just said they're 100 times stronger and they're only $5 more. And I was just like, okay, because I was getting a pretty high tolerance at this point.
Welcome to Homeless US News. We cover what's happening on America's streets with facts, humanity, and a refusal to look away. This episode is not graphic. We won't describe drug use in detail. We won't glamorize addiction. We won't treat people as scenery. We're here to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what actually reduces homelessness, not just what moves it around. Tonight, we're going into California's crisis as a warning flare for the entire nation. We'll look at the pressures pushing people out of housing, the public frustration driving crackdowns, the gaps in mental health and addiction care, and the policies that repeatedly promise change but often deliver churn. Stay with me, because what's happening here isn't just about tents. It's about what kind of country we become when the cost of living rises faster than compassion, and when the response to a human emergency starts to look like a strategy of disappearance. This is the Dream on Fire.
Well, at first it was just fun, right? It was just for fun. It was just a party drug that, and there's been some things that I've gone through and it helped with a lot of pain. And especially after, that dog attack, I just couldn't stop,
Part 1, the tipping point nitrogen monoxide unwanted. California has always carried a myth that if you work hard enough, you can rebuild your life under the sky. But in 2025, that myth is colliding with the hard math of housing. Home ownership sits out of reach for millions. Rents rise while wages struggle to keep up. Inflation eats through paychecks. A single emergency and injury, a layoff, a divorce. A rent increase can become a fast track from stability to a car, then from a car to a couch, then from a couch to the street. And once someone is outside, everything gets harder at the same time. Paperwork becomes a maze. Appointments become impossible without a phone, a charger, a ride, or a safe place to sleep. Shelter beds fill quickly, and strict rules can exclude people who work late shifts, people with partners, people with pets, and people whose trauma makes crowded spaces feel unsafe. So people build survival where they can. Underpasses, riverbeds, parking lots, side streets, and then comes the tension. The public sees the camps and feels fear, frustration, and exhaustion. Businesses complain, parents worry, residents demand change, leaders face pressure to clean up. That pressure is real, but here is the danger when the demand becomes make it disappear. The response often becomes displacement, not resolution. Now imagine the worst-case acceleration. Not fantasy, not conspiracy, just a perfect storm built from real trends. A recession hits, housing costs spike again. Wildfires and heat displacement push more people into urban areas. Temporary supports dry up. Evictions rise. Families who were barely holding on fall through. Suddenly, the crisis is not measured in pockets. It's measured in waves. What happens then? At first, communities improvise. Churches open halls. Mutual aid groups hand out water and food. Neighbors share phone chargers. People try to hold the line with kindness. But improvisation can't replace a system. Week after week, the street becomes a pressure cooker. Shade becomes territory. Underpasses become real estate. Conflict rises not because people are bad, but because constant survival turns every basic need into competition. Police and sanitation teams sweep one block, and 3 more appear. Without exits into real housing and real care, enforcement becomes a revolving door. It doesn't end homelessness, it moves it, and then the ripple reaches the wider economy. Tourism slows, small businesses close, downtown corridors hollow out, tax revenue drops, city budgets shift toward emergency response cleanups over time. Short-term triage while the long-term build-out of housing and care falls behind. In this kind of spiral, the tragedy is not only the tense. The tragedy is the speed at which a society can become used to it, not because people stop caring, but because the human mind cannot grieve at full volume every day without eventually turning that grief into numbness or anger. And that is the tipping point no one wanted. When a crisis becomes normal, the moral temperature changes. And in California, that temperature is rising. Part 2. The collapse costs us all. When homelessness grows at scale, it doesn't stay contained. It reshapes everything around it: social trust, public spaces, budgets, health systems, and politics. It becomes a shared crisis even when we pretend it is someone else's problem. Socially, public spaces harden. Parks and promenades stop feeling shared. Families avoid certain routes. People who are already living on the edge start making harder choices, trading safety for shelter, warmth for risk, privacy for survival. For those living with mental health conditions, the street is not just uncomfortable, it's destabilizing. If someone is in crisis, they have nowhere private to fall apart. Their worst day becomes public. Their breakdown becomes a spectacle. And the crowd responds the way crowds often respond, with fear first. That fear becomes distance. Distance becomes stigma. Stigma becomes policy. Economically, the feedback loop is brutal. Retail corridors dim. Commuters stay away. Tourism hesitates. Businesses that once survived on foot traffic can't make rent, and closures multiply. As commerce shrinks, the tax base shrinks. And when the tax base shrinks, the very services meant to reduce homelessness, housing, navigation, mental health care, treatment access, outreach gets strained even further. Meanwhile, city money gets pulled into recurring emergencies, encampment cleanups, emergency room cycling, short-term motel placements, repeated police response, repeated court costs. That is not a solution economy. That is a crisis economy. Health-wise, the burden lands on the places least designed to hold it. Emergency rooms and jails. Hospitals become overflow shelters. ER staff treat the same people again and again, not because care doesn't work, but because the person is discharged back into the same conditions that created the crisis. Without stable housing, recovery becomes a revolving door. And then there is the drug supply. We can talk about it without graphic detail. Fentanyl has made the street more lethal. The distance between use and death can be frighteningly small. Even when life-saving interventions work, people may experience repeated overdoses, repeated trauma, repeated physical decline because their life remains unstable. This is why the debate can't be reduced to slogans. Keeping people alive is essential, but keeping people alive while leaving them outside is not a finish line. Politically, the pressure explodes. Protests rise, lawsuits multiply, city councils fracture, communities split into camps, those demanding enforcement, those demanding compassion, those demanding both but getting neither. And in the chaos, trust breaks down. People stop believing the system can solve anything. Voters become cynical. They hear billions spent and still see tents. They hear task force and still see suffering. That cynicism is understandable, but it becomes dangerous when it turns into a belief that nothing works. Because if nothing works, then cruelty starts to look like the only option left. And that is how a society drifts into policies that punish poverty instead of ending it. Part 3. Why we keep failing. California does not lack good people. It does not lack hardworking outreach teams. It does not lack innovation. It does not even lack funding compared to many other places. So why does the crisis keep regenerating? One word: fragmentation. California has programs. Many of them help, but too often they operate on different timelines, under different rules, with different paperwork, different eligibility, different data systems, and different definitions of success. One agency funds shelter beds, another funds treatment, another funds transitional housing, another funds permanent supportive housing, another controls permits, another controls mental health slots, another handles benefits. A person on the street experiences this not as a system, but as a maze. They are told to call one number, then another, to show up here, then there, to bring documents they don't have, to meet requirements they cannot meet while living outside. Sometimes, rules meant for accountability turn into barriers. Prove residency, show pay stubs, wait for an appointment, stay sober first, complete a program first, follow a schedule that assumes you have transportation and stability. The people who need the most help are often the people least able to satisfy the rules. Designed for order. And then there is the housing market. The crisis is not mysterious. If the number of affordable units is far below the number of people who need them, people will be pushed out. If we do not build deeply affordable housing at scale, the pipeline out of homelessness will always be slower than the pipeline into it. Zoning restrictions limit density where it's needed most. Construction costs rise. Permits take time. Lawsuits stall projects. Neighborhood opposition blocks supportive housing while demanding tents disappear. That is the moral trap. First, we demand the street crisis go away. Then we reject the infrastructure that would make it go away. Then we punish the people who cannot disappear. And over all of this, fentanyl intensifies the emergency. Not as a moral story, but as a public health reality. A dangerous supply meets a population under extreme stress, trauma, and instability. When treatment access is scarce and low-barrier care is limited, people cycle. When people cycle, the street becomes the place where health fails in public. So the failure is not a single bad program. It is a misaligned machine. A machine that produces motion instead of outcomes. A machine that rewards activity referrals, intakes, short placements more than it rewards stability measured over months and years. And until we change what we build and what we measure, we will keep repeating the same pattern: sweep, scatter, repeat. Part 4. How to bend the curve. There is no single fix. There is a bundle of keys. And the most honest way to talk about solutions is to talk about them like infrastructure, because that's what they are. First, housing at scale. Not just shelters, not just temporary beds. Real doors, real leases, real stability. That means converting what we already have: older motels, underused buildings, and in some cases office space into housing faster than ground-up construction can deliver. It means standardized designs, faster approvals, and public land used with urgency. It means protecting naturally affordable units, the older apartments that are still within reach, so they don't flip into luxury and vanish from the pool. It means supportive housing for people who need it most, housing paired with on-site services, so the most vulnerable aren't set up to fail. Second, prevention as the first response. If a family is one notice away from eviction, prevention is cheaper, faster, and more humane than waiting until they're in a car. That looks like rental assistance delivered quickly, legal aid that prevents unjust evictions, mediation that keeps a temporary crisis from becoming long-term homelessness, help that arrives early, not after collapse. Third, health and housing together, not competing. The debate is often framed as housing first versus treatment first, but the truth is more practical. People need both, and they need them connected. Treatment works better when a person has housing. Housing works better when a person has support. So we need care embedded where people already are. In shelters, in navigation centers, in mobile clinics, in street outreach. We need medication for opioid use disorder accessible without impossible hoops. We need mental health care that doesn't take months to reach. We need continuity, not one-time contact. Fourth, a single front door. One coordinated entry system that actually functions. One shared list. One transparent dashboard. One view of what beds exist tonight, what housing units are opening next month, and where the bottlenecks are. When systems share a scoreboard, they stop competing and start coordinating. Fifth, real work pathways. Not shame, not lectures, paychecks, transitional jobs that rebuild routine, apprenticeships in trades that pay enough to live, partnerships with employers willing to hire people exiting homelessness, and recovery with support. That helps retention, not just hiring. And sixth, public will, not public war. Communities deserve safety, but safety cannot be built by turning human beings into targets. We have to replace myths with truth and fear with a plan. We have to distribute solutions fairly so no single neighborhood carries all the burden. We have to stop treating housing and clinics as threats and start treating them as the infrastructure of stability. Because bending the curve is not about winning an argument. It's about building enough exits so fewer people are forced to live outside. Part 5. What's already working? If this story were only tragedy, there would be nothing to do but turn away. But there are places where progress is real, not perfect, but real. One pattern is what you could call the micro-win model. Measurable weekly move-ins, consistent outreach, and visible progress that builds trust. When communities see people actually moving indoors, the public mood shifts from despair to belief, and belief is fuel. Another pattern is landlord partnerships done the right way. When landlords have one reliable contact, guaranteed payments, a support line that answers, and a way to address problems quickly, they are more willing to rent to someone with a voucher or a fragile history. The best programs don't just place people, they keep them housed. Another pattern is peer navigation. People with lived experience, people who have survived homelessness, addiction, or incarceration can reach someone who doesn't trust the system. They speak the street's language. They understand the fear behind no. They can turn one conversation into a real step forward. Street medicine is another point of hope. Teams that bring care directly to people, wound care, mental health support, basic checkups, connection to treatment, reduce hospital overload and save lives before crises explode. They create a bridge from the sidewalk to stability. And there is another success that rarely gets celebrated: transparency. When a city publicly tracks real outcomes, how many people moved into permanent housing, how many stayed housed at 6 and 12 months, how many unsheltered people decreased, excuses shrink, and coordination grows. Success becomes a shared goal, not a press release. These are not miracles, they are mechanics. And the lesson is simple: when systems align around outcomes, people's lives change. Not because people suddenly become better, but because the ladder stops missing rungs. Part 6. The moral math. People often hear the price tag and freeze. Billions spent, billions more needed. But here's the question California must ask in 2025. We are paying either way. We can pay for emergency rooms, repeated cleanups, repeated policing, repeated court costs, and repeated funerals. Or we can pay for prevention, housing, treatment access, and long-term stability. One path buys the illusion of control for a morning. The other path buys fewer people dying outside. The moral math becomes clearer when you strip away the politics. A person sleeping outside is not a policy debate. It is a human being living at the edge of survival. And when a society becomes comfortable with that, something breaks that has nothing to do with budgets. It's not only the unhoused who lose, it is all of us. Because public trust collapses, community life shrinks, fear grows, civic pride becomes cynicism, and soon, everyone is building walls instead of solutions. California has built extraordinary things: aqueducts, universities, industries, art, innovation that changed the world. So the real question is not whether California is capable. The question is whether California is willing to build stability with the same seriousness. It builds profit, willing to measure success in keys and retention, not in optics and sweeps. Outro. Before the fault line gives. California stands on a fault line, not only geographic, moral, economic, political, and what you've heard tonight is not destiny. It is a warning and an invitation, because the solutions we talked about already exist somewhere in this state. The task is not invention, it is scale, not pilot programs that fade, pipelines that move people from the street to housing and keep them there. So here's the call, and it's simple. Pick one lever and pull it. If prevention moves you, fight for rental assistance and eviction diversion so a 2-week setback doesn't become a 2-year disaster. If housing conversion moves you, show up and support motel and building conversions in your district with real services attached and real timelines. If healthcare moves you, support mobile teams and treatment access that people can actually reach. If transparency moves you, demand dashboards that show move-ins, vacancies, and long-term retention publicly, weekly, clearly. And if you want safer streets, understand this. The surest path to safer streets is fewer people living outside. Not moved around, not hidden, housed. You don't have to be an expert to matter. One evening at a city council meeting matters. One vote for prevention matters. One recurring donation to an outcomes-driven organization matters. One conversation where you replace why don't they with how do we matters. And one moment of human recognition matters. Because the smallest rebellion against dehumanization is this: to look at someone and treat them like they still belong to the world. This is Homeless US News. If you want us to cover what's happening in your city, what policies are working, what's failing, and where the money is going, tell us in the comments. Share this episode with someone who thinks homelessness is just a choice. And if you stay with us, we will keep reporting with facts, with compassion, and with the refusal to look away. Because the dream doesn't have to burn. But we cannot save it with slogans. We save it with doors, with care, with accountability, with prevention, with courage. Not later, not somewhere else, not someone else. Now, here, US.